Make plans to stay safe in an emergency or a public safety power shutoff. Have a shared plan for you and your loved ones. Start today at sce.com/be prepared.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
A bad night for both of LA's NBA teams. The Lakers lose by 44 in Philadelphia. The Clippers lose at home to a very short-handed Denver Nuggets team. The 44-point loss to the Sixers is the worst defeat in LeBron's 21-year career. Sixers center Joel Embiid had a dominant triple-double, 30 points, 11 rebounds, and 11 assists. After the game, LeBron said a lot needs to change. When LeBron talks like that, it's usually a subtle message to the front office. Stay tuned. As bad as things were for the Lakers last night, it was worse for the Clippers. Injuries kept Denver's best three players in the training room. Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, and Aaron Gordon did not play. The Nuggets still beat the Clippers by 9. Former Clipper Reggie Jackson led the Nuggets with 35 points and 13 assists. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Environmental justice, pollution, and climate. In Los Angeles and across America, people of color are suffering and dying from disproportionate health impacts on a planet that has less than 10 years to prevent irreversible damage. Heat illnesses, respiratory illnesses, water-related illnesses, food system impacts, insect-related diseases, Black maternal health, and mental health effects. As the impacts of climate change mount, millions of vulnerable people, our people, are going to bear the brunt of these extreme environmental events, which will likely lead to forced displacement, loss of cultural identity, and other related risks. These realities are as real as rain. Stay tuned to KBLA Talk 1580 for more details about the most progressive multimedia and live events campaign any Black media outlet has ever undertaken to combat the climate catastrophe. Experts, events, empowerment. It's all on the way from unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580. We don't black down. We level up.
Level up, 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 level up.
1, 2, 3, go! I'm gonna try to keep it coming. Things ain't always smooth, but I'll be alright as long as I can find the groove. Yes, I will. Somehow I know that I can make it. You seem to like my style. All right. Don't you worry, I'm gonna be around a while. Yes, I will. I'm just happy to see you talk to me back in style again.
Live from historic Leimert Park in Los Angeles, California, I'm Tavis Smiley, and I'm so glad to see you and me back in stride again. Before we get started with today's show, let me invite you to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at The Real Tavis Smiley and get updates on X, that's formerly Twitter, at Tavis Smiley. By the way, should you miss any part of today's program or want to catch up on previous shows, you can always visit thetavissmileyshow.com. That's thetavissmileyshow.com or wherever you get your podcast, and listen to the podcast of this program at your leisure. Another great show on tap for you today. In our second hour, have you ever wondered how the civil rights movement was actually funded? We talk about it all the time, but ever thought about how it was actually funded? Well, there was a powerhouse fundraising effort that supported the movement, and CUNY history professor Tanisha Ford has the receipts. She'll tell us all about it today in hour 2. I think you'll be fascinated by the backstory as I was reading this book about how the civil rights movement, as we know it, was actually funded. It's an amazing story, or stories, I should say. We'll look forward to that conversation with Professor Ford in our second hour today. In our third hour, the man behind the hit HBO series Showtime about the LA Lakers Lord Jesus, was that an ugly game last night or what? The worst loss of LeBron James's career last night ever. Got blown out last night, and yet he broke the record for most minutes played. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, of course, had that record. So another record night for LeBron, but a horrible beatdown they took last night. Anyway, the man behind the HBO series Showtime, of course, about the Magic Johnson era. Also the guy behind Hulu's Wu-Tang, an American Saga. Same guy behind Marvel's Runaways, and the same guy behind American Gods on Stars. Rodney Barnes is a very busy Hollywood showrunner, but he's slowing down long enough to take a seat in this studio for 60 minutes later today in Hour 3. But in this first hour, 2 more conversations. We just celebrated American Education Week, and on the B side of this hour, a dialogue with Randy Weingarten, president of the American Federation of Teachers, AFL-CIO. But we commence today's program in tribute to former First Lady Rosalynn Carter. Mrs. Carter lay in repose at the Carter Center in Atlanta. She'll be memorialized today at Glenn Memorial Church at Emory University. I am pleased to be joined by 2 guests right now to talk about the life and legacy of Rosalynn Carter. Aaron Glantz is a Peabody Award-winning journalist who is senior editor at The Fuller Project, and Avery Davis Roberts is associate director of the Democracy Program at the Carter Center. Pleased to welcome both of them to this program. Aaron, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing well. Good to be with you.
Good to have you on. And Avery, how are you today?
I'm very well. How are you?
If I complained, I'd be an ingrate. I am doing well and delighted to have you both on. Avery, let me start with you. I've had the honor of not just visiting the Carter Center, but being invited by the president a couple times to lecture at the Carter Center. So it's a great facility, and again, just honored to have been there a couple of times during the life of Rosalynn Carter and Jimmy Carter, of course, who will be at this memorial service today, President Carter. So let me just start by asking the mood, the thoughts that you are hearing expressed about Rosalynn Carter today at the Carter Center.
You know, I think as I was reflecting on this morning, so we had the beginning of her sort of period of repose, as you mentioned yesterday, and I think the mood, was certainly somber, as you would expect in a moment like that, but really sort of underlying that feeling of somberness, there was really just a sense of celebration of a life well lived. Someone who just gave so much her whole life, had a long life, a happy marriage, wonderful children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren that she loved very much around her for all of her life. And so just really so much to celebrate. And so while it's a little sad, it's also been something that I think has been really a moment for us to celebrate her life and look forward to sort of thinking about how her life can continue to inspire us as we move forward and take her vision and her legacy on through the years at the Carter Center.
Basically 80 years together. Hard to even say that. 80 years she and Jimmy Carter spent together. And long before the country was offered this sort of 2-for-1 package with Bill and Hillary Clinton, Rosalynn Carter and Jimmy Carter came as a team. They were lifelong partners, and so much is said, of course, about him. Makes sense. He's the former president. But what would you say her imprint has been on the Carter Center specifically?
Well, I mean, she's, I think, best known for all of the work that she has done for the last 50 years, might I say, on mental health issues, reducing the stigma around mental health, really working to promote parity for mental health in the context of insurance policies, thinking, sort of taking a systems approach to how we can improve mental health, increase wellness in the United States and around the world. But she was very much, as you say, his partner, not just in their marriage and in the White House, but in their leadership of the Carter Center. And so, her finger was on all of the work done by the center in the health programs, but also in the peace programs where I work and all of our election-related work and our human rights work. She was very much a leader. President Carter is often thought of as the sort of the leader of many of our election observation missions. Well, she was often there with him, co-leading those missions or leading missions herself sometimes. So she was very much his partner in the leadership of the center over the course of the last 40 years. In
so many ways, mental health is an issue that we still don't take seriously enough in this country. We only talk about it seemingly when somebody has grabbed a weapon and killed a bunch of people. And then we discover more about their backstory. And for the moment, we will have a conversation about mental health. Or we have mental health conversations when we talk about about homelessness and particular acts that homeless persons are accused of. But it's only in those sort of spaces, homelessness or some gun rampage, where we ever can wrap our brains around mental health. As you heard Avery Davis Roberts say a moment ago, Rosalind Carter spent half a century working on this issue in a way that nobody else ever has, I think. And her mental health advocacy has changed journalism, I think it's fair to say, and journalists. Aaron Glantz wrote a powerful piece called Rosalind Carter. Talked about how Rosalind Carter helped him find a new purpose. We'll give him the microphone and allow him to express himself with regard to how her advocacy changed the way he does his journalism. Every living former First Lady in Atlanta today to memorialize Rosalind Carter. We'll continue our tribute to her when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
You're listening to Tavis Smiley. Tavis Smiley. Ranked number 45 on the Heavy 100 list of the 100 most important radio talk show hosts in America.
Escalade IQ. This the intro to the all-electric Cadillac, perfection like Zoom. And on a full charge, you get 450 miles without the stop. Haiku. This is what I do. Daddy fat intellect since '92. Linked all the way back, panoramic roof. Coming 24-inch rim standard. Ooh, why? Shawty don't kill him. Cadillac diamond in the back, cold chillin'. And when I'm on attack, on the track is no ceiling. Sky's the limit. You hear me? You hear me? Straight drop, no parachutes. Lay lines like a longitude and latitude. Deal it, beloved, clearly we're hustling. Bussin', truckin'. Cadillac.
For more on the Escalade IQ, visit Cadillac.com.
Available late 2024. GM estimate 450-mile range. On a full charge based on development testing and/or analytical projection. Consistent with SCHA 1634 revision 2017 MCT. Range subject to change prior to production. Annual rates may vary based on service factors, including ambience, temperature, terrain, battery age, and condition loading, and how you use and maintain your vehicle.
I have lots of fragrance lovers on my list, and Ulta Beauty has all I need to add joy to their holiday season. Shop your favorite fragrances from YSL, Carolina Herrera, Valentino, and Ariana Grande's new exclusive Cloud Pink scent. Plus, with a fragrance purchase of $70 or more, get a plush robe or throw, valued at $70, while supplies last. Shop the gifts that bring joy to everyone on your list this holiday season, especially you. Ulta Beauty, the possibilities are beautiful.
She's so smooth, so... I'm interrupting my own shower to remind you to treat your skin like the queen she is with Olay Hyaluronic Body Wash, packed with Olay's highest level of vitamin B3 complex. It's so moisturizing that it will give you visibly smoother, head-turning skin in just 14 days. People wondering, how'd she get so smooth? Olay Hyaluronic Body Wash. Also, try Olay Hyaluronic Body Lotion.
Hey, it's Amanda, and a little thing I love about the Chick-fil-A nugget trays is that they're so easy for the holidays. They're warm and flavorful. It's always a crowd pleaser. When I put down a nugget tray, everyone is happy.
Hey, this is Brian, and the little thing I love about the Chick-fil-A nugget trays is the joy that it brings to me and everybody around me during the holidays. They're warm, juicy, and delicious.
Cater the holidays with Chick-fil-A today. Available on the Chick-fil-A app. Real guests paid for their testimonials.
Did you know addiction to drugs like meth or cocaine is a disease and not a choice? But getting help is. If you have stimulant use disorder, your family and friends may have a lot of questions, including where to start. Choose Change California can help. Make a change today and find a proven treatment option for you at choosechangeca.org.
Made fresh daily in Leimert Park, Los Angeles, California. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Continuing our tribute now to former First Lady Rosalind Carter, who's being memorialized today in Atlanta. Pleased to be joined by two guests, Avery Davis Roberts, who is the Associate Director of the Democracy Project program, I should say, at the Carter Center, and Aaron Glantz, Peabody winning radio, print, and TV journalist, senior editor at the Fuller Project. So, Aaron, I invited you on because I saw this powerful piece you wrote about what Rosalind Carter did for the kind of journalism that you engage. I don't want to color what you wrote too much since you're here and can speak for yourself in your own words. So take it away, Aaron Glantz.
Well, thank you so much, Tavis, for having me on. And I wrote about in the piece about how I came home from Iraq myself. You mentioned that she was very engaged in mental health programs and in getting us to think about mental health, even when there is not some kind of violent incident. And in 1996, she founded a fellowship program for journalists who wanted to focus on these things. So I came back from Iraq in 2005 after 3 years reporting there, and I began to focus on the conditions that veterans face back home. I did stories about veterans who died by suicide. I did stories about veterans who were denied their benefits and were living in, their trucks and their cars despite, the reason for that being that they were wounded in the war and could not work. I just filed story after story, and without a real purpose to it. I was just trying to inflict this pain that I had on the world, I think, through my journalism. But when Rosalind Carter gave me this fellowship, and I traveled to Atlanta, and I met with her as part of a cohort of journalists tackling mental health issues, the very first question she asked me was, how will you make an impact with this work? How will you use the power of journalism to fight the stigma of mental illness and make change? And, as First Lady, Mrs. Carter came into the White House at a time where we were reeling with the horrible mistreatment of Vietnam veterans who came home from the war and were told that they simply weren't tough enough, right? And that the fact that they couldn't sleep at night or, that they were falling into addiction or homelessness was their fault. And she was very determined to make sure that that did not happen for Iraq and Afghanistan veterans. And she was very early in her investment in that question. And so she was present the entire time that I was in Atlanta for training, giving notes, listening to all the journalists who were there, providing feedback and guidance. And the following year, she invited journalists from all across the country to come to the Carter Center who were going to be tackling military and veteran issues. Not big-time reporters from like the New York Times and Washington Post, although they were there, but smaller reporters from from the black media, from regional newspapers where veterans were actually coming home, and making sure that we were not making those same mistakes that we made in the Vietnam era again.
I opined on this earlier, as you heard, about the ways in which we do or don't, for that matter, cover mental health. Let me just pause on the Rosalind Carter piece of this for just a second. Since you were there and were empowered and inspired by her, Aaron, all those years ago, let me just ask you, how do you think all these years later we are doing in this country, the media that is, when it comes to talking about mental health?
We have a long way to go, as you just said, but we are miles away from where we were when Rosalind Carter got involved in this. We no longer have headlines in newspapers calling people insane or crazy and having that on the chyron of television screens. There's literally hundreds of journalists like myself who have been trained in best practices by Mrs. Carter. And actually, if you look at the piece that I wrote about Mrs. Carter and her legacy in this area that was published by NPR, NPR's standards editor added a note there that said that if reading this made you feel distressed and had suicidal thoughts because of the heaviness of what I was writing about, that here's the place to go to get help. That is not something that would have existed even 5 years ago, but it is now in the muscle memory of many media outlets because of the work that Rosalind Carter did. And in the aftermath of her death, I've been reaching out to other journalists like myself who've been touched by Mrs. Carter, and I wrote about it in the piece. And one of the things that she did was she gave all of us who care about mental illness and mental health and good coverage of it a place to come and work together. So I interviewed, Sarif Hawk, who's a Cambodian-American journalist who's a refugee from the Khmer Rouge genocide, who wanted to cover the long-term psychological impact on her community of that atrocity. I talked to Brett Schultes, who's a journalist in Pennsylvania who did a project on the mistreatment of mentally ill in jails and prisons, but whose own brother suffered from mental illness and ended up dying of a drug overdose as a result. And all of us were able to come together through the convening of journalists and the movement that Mrs. Carter was trying to build. And she gave us a place to go. She gave us a sense of purpose, and she gave us a way to pay it forward. And so I'm glad to have this opportunity here with you, Tavis, to talk about that because you're now part of that paying it forward.
No, indeed we are. We all are. And honored to be so. So Avery, I've had the honor in my career, I think as this audience knows, to interview President Carter more times than I can count. I mean, I literally have a library of all of my conversations over the years. I consider him a friend, and we've sat for many conversations over the years on radio and television. And so I know him to some degree. And the thing you mentioned earlier that he is most celebrated for around the world is his laser focus on democracy. We talk a good game in this country about spreading democracy around the world, but here is a person who has dedicated himself to traveling literally millions of miles around the world to make sure that elections are fair and free, and that democracy has a chance to be seated and to grow. To your earlier point, though, and you sort of you teed this up. I want to go straight to it, Avery. Jimmy Carter did not do that alone. So you hear Aaron now talking quite brilliantly about the role that she played for 50 years, as you mentioned, on mental health, Avery. But tell me more about the work she did alongside Jimmy Carter with regard to the democracy program that you are part of at the Carter Center.
Yeah, thanks, Tavis. Yeah, so she and President Carter were definitely, as I said, equals when it came to leadership of all of the programs at the Carter Center, although obviously the mental health program and the work with the journalists that Blaine was just describing was, her wheelhouse. But they did so much together, and she participated as a co-leader on many of the Carter Center's election observation missions. I think the very first election observation mission that I worked on at the Carter Center in 2004 was to Indonesia, and she and President Carter were there together co-leading that mission. And I think the last mission that I worked on internationally was to Egypt, and she also came with President Carter on those missions. And, it was always a pleasure to be with the two of them on those missions because you could really see how they worked together, how they brought their different strengths to the work, and how they really had sort of honed this team dynamic between the two of them. And when we'd go out on election day, as an election observer, you go out to the polling stations and you've got long checklists of very specific questions that you are trying to answer, so that you really, at the end of the day, our team will have a very full picture of how the election is going on election day. And Mrs. Carter's approach is to answer every single question and to take very detailed notes, because she would want us to basically see what she had seen, to really know everything that was happening in that polling place. And President Carter's approach was a little bit more sort of atmospheric, I would say. He was a little less attentive to the details of those checklists. And so, it was always good when they went out together, because he would give you the sort of overall sense of the place, and she would really have spoken to every single person who worked in the polling place, talked to voters. She'd have descriptions of, how people were waiting and how many women were waiting with their children to be able to vote, and how long had they been there, and how far had they come, and what did this mean to them to be able to vote. So she really was a detailed sort of surveyor of the environment, and added so much richness to the work that we did on all of our election observation missions with her.
There's no doubt about the fact that we still have voter suppression issues in this country, and it'd be laughable if it weren't so serious that here we are monitoring, observing elections around the globe, and we still, again, have voter suppression issues in our own country. We still don't have a United States Senate that can pass meaningful voting rights reform. And we all just saw days ago a federal court gut a particular and important piece of the Voting Rights Act that makes it harder for folk who have been violated to sue the government. And so we have our own issues in this democracy, this experiment in democracy, as I would call it, called America. I offer that as a background because I want to ask the following question, Avery, and that is, and you gave us some sense of this, but for all these years we've been hearing about Jimmy and Rosalynn Carter traveling the world, monitoring elections. Again, you gave us some insight, but from a personal perspective, tell me what it's like. What's it like to be an election observer as an American in another country?
Well, I think when I first started out at the Carter Center, it was in the early 2000s, and it was, following the 2000 election, it was very difficult to be going and talking to people about elections because people say, well, what about yours? What about those hanging chads?
Sure.
Huh?
Mm-hmm.
So, this is a question that we sort of had to respond to then, and then have since had to respond to, but from a sort of different perspective in the last several years. I think, from the perspective of the Carter Center, we have always approached this with a sense of humility. We know that, as you say, this is an experiment. We are all working on this, that we are working on it as much as people in the Democratic Republic of the Congo are working on it, as much as people in, Germany are working on it. We all have to keep working on it and be continually sort of vigilant in our support and our promotion of our democratic practice. And it is a practice. It is something we have to do every day. It is an action we take to do democracy. And so, this has been rewarding for me in the last few years. Since 2020, the Carter Center has also started turning our attention to democracy and election issues here in the United States. And so it has been just really, I think, for many of us on the staff at the Carter Center, and I know for President and Mrs. Carter as well, something that we felt was important for us to do, to be able to, when we go and work internationally, to be able to say, well, we know that we are not perfect. We are also taking care of what's happening at home just as much as we're here to help you take care of what's happening in your home. We all have to do this together. So it's been, we feel glad that one of the things that President and Mrs. Carter have been so supportive of in the last several years has been a focus more on what's happening here in the United States and finding ways that we can bring our international experience and our international expertise back here to the United States.
Got about 90 seconds left, Aaron Glantz. We'll give you the last word. What say you about the legacy of Rosalynn Carter?
I'm just thinking about her decency and her power, and listening to Avery right now talk about the way she behaved overseas. That's exactly the way she behaved with us journalists. And I'm reminded of a conversation I had with this Cambodian-American journalist, Cerise Hawk, who told me that it was only after she got the Carter Center Fellowship in 2022, so just last year, that she learned that Mrs. Carter went to the refugee camps in Thailand in 1979 and worked to get Cambodian refugees into this country. And so it was an active war zone at the time. She showed tremendous courage in going there, but like Avery was saying, she didn't call a lot of attention to herself. And then decades later, one of the people who was able to come to this country because of her work ends up doing important journalism about mental health in this country. Just sticking to it, that kind of decency and power over so many years. I'm so blessed to be able to honor her memory with you today, Tavis.
No, thank you for the opportunity to share with the audience your experiences with her. I have never in my life, or certainly rarely, met more decent people than Jimmy and Rosalynn Carter, and it's my great honor to have had this opportunity to join the Aaron and Avery show, if I can put it that way, the Aaron and Avery show in tribute to Rosalynn Carter. Every living former First Lady in Atlanta today for the memorial service for Rosalynn Carter at the Glenn Memorial Church at Emory University. She's been lying in repose at the Carter Center in Atlanta yesterday and this morning. And tomorrow, the private service for family and friends back in Plains. It all began in Plains. It all ends in Plains. All roads lead to Plains for Jimmy and Rosalynn Carter. Aaron Glantz is a Peabody Award-winning radio, print, and TV journalist, senior editor at the Fuller Project, and also California bureau chief for the Fuller Project. Avery Davis Roberts is associate director of the Democracy Program at the Carter Center in the ATL. Aaron, all the best to you. Avery, thank you for your time. Both of you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on our program. More when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Seeking the truth. Speaking the truth. This is the Tavis Smiley Show.
What's up, party people? It's your favorite MC's favorite rapper, MC Light here. And we're celebrating 50 years of hip-hop, authentically powered by Cadillac. And we're going to take it way back to where it started. It was only fitting that hip-hop began with teenagers at a back-to-school jam in the rec room of a South Bronx apartment complex by an 18-year-old brother. By the way, I'm also sure he had a Cadillac parked outside. He noticed the energy on the dance floor when he switched between two turntables, extending the beats, repeating the breaks, and never losing the rhythms. And that was the birth of hip-hop. And from that moment, it took off.
For more on how Cadillac is celebrating hip-hop's 50th, visit Cadillac.com/audacity.
We'd like to thank you for sharing a part of your Tuesday with us here on the Black Information Network. I'm Mike Moore. Now here's the latest. President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden are set to attend a tribute service today in Georgia for late former First Lady Rosalind Carter. Also on hand will be former President Jimmy Carter, her husband of 77 years. Carter's attendance comes despite him being in hospice care. The formal funeral will take place tomorrow. The Minnesota Supreme Court is breaking new ground after a ceremony yesterday in St. Paul. Natalie Hudson was sworn in as Chief Justice, becoming the first black person to ever hold that position. Hudson was first appointed to the High Court in 2015. Now, she'll be forced to retire in just 4 short years. That's when she'll turn 70. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
Going to be a bit of a scorcher in Sun Valley. We're seeing a crash working here on our 5 South at Hollywood Way. Crash onto the right shoulder as far back as San Fernando Mission Boulevard, the busy drive. Culver City, the 405 South, Washington Boulevard, Culver, a wreck onto the right side. We do have that busy drive out of the valley, anywhere from the 118 all the way up and over the hill to Sunset. The 405 South at the 118, there's a wreck onto the right shoulder, and a stalled vehicle on that 405 South around Devonshire. That's onto the right side. Sherman Oaks, it's a Sigler at the 405 South approaching the 101, left lane with a broken down vehicle.
Southern California Edison. Make plans to stay safe in an emergency or a public safety power shutoff. Have a shared plan for you and your loved ones. Start today at sce.com/be prepared.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
A bad night for both of LA's NBA teams. The Lakers lose by 44 in Philadelphia. The Clippers lose at home to a very short-handed Denver Nuggets team. The 44-point loss to the Sixers is the worst defeat in LeBron's 21-year career. Sixers center Joel Embiid had a dominant triple-double, 30 points, 11 rebounds, and 11 assists. After the game, LeBron said a lot needs to change. When LeBron talks like that, it's usually a subtle message to the front office. Stay tuned. As bad as things were for the Lakers last night, it was worse for the Clippers. Injuries kept Denver's best 3 players in the training room. Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, and Aaron Gordon did not play. The Nuggets still beat the Clippers by 9. Former Clipper Reggie Jackson led the Nuggets with 35 points and 13 assists. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice and injustice, the courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities, and sports figures, elected leaders, and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Ariva Martin in real time, your commute just became the most engaging part of your day. Tune in weekdays from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. or find us on YouTube. Ariva Martin in real time, when you want it straight, no chaser.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Do you have both Medi-Cal and Medicare?
If so, the new LA Care plan called Medicare Plus can help you get the most out of your health plan for $0.
LA Care provides personalized service to Angelinos like us.
Plus, it gives us access to doctors and specialists across Los Angeles County.
For zero cost, we get access to full benefits.
From vision coverage
in-home support services
to prescription drug coverage
and a quarterly over-the-counter allowance,
plus personal equipment,
meal programs,
a gym membership,
and so much more.
For more than 25 years,
LA Care has provided Angelenos with access to quality health care at an affordable cost.
For our families,
our seniors,
our community,
it's a plus.
It's a plus
for all of us.
For all of us, this generation and the next, there is simply no place in our lives for litter. And yet, it's everywhere we look. And unfortunately, it does belong to all of us. So, let's come together and create a litter-free, clean California, once and for all. Remember to properly dispose of your trash and recycling. Secure truckloads with tarps to keep debris from flying out. Clean out your car when you're at a gas station. Take pride in your community by organizing a cleanup event. Or join a cleanup event near you. Zero litter is the goal. Join us at cleanca.com. That's cleanca.com. Let's do it together. Brought to you by Caltrans. cleanca.com.
Let's get back to more of this rich dialogue with Tavis Smiley.
A lot to cover in this half hour with our guest, Randy Weingarten, president of the American Federation of Teachers, AFL-CIO. We just celebrated, as you recall, American Education Week. We had a pretty powerful roundtable of educators on this program celebrating again the recent week that we designate as American Education Week once a year in this country. We'll get Randy Weingarten's thoughts on the state of American education in a moment. But let me start, Randy, by asking you your read on, actually, I started calling it a summer of strikes, and then it went past the summer, so I had to change my phrase to a season of strikes. But there's been so much activity of late with labor unions. You run one of the biggest. Your thoughts on all this activity in this country with laborers who've had enough?
So, first off, Tavis, it's so great to hear your voice, and it's great to be with you.
Likewise.
And so thank you so much. So I think what's happened in this, we're in a very bizarre, scary, terrifying time in not only America but the world. And we really are in this fight of hope and fear and of democracy versus autocracy. And, you know, and for workers, regular workers, what I think has happened over the last 2 or 3 years in particular, and the last time we saw this, and remember, I am a social studies teacher, so I look through the aperture of history. Even though there's lots of things that were wrong with FDR and with FDR's presidency, the last time we saw work, not wealth, prioritized by a president of the United States was FDR. And Biden has a lot of FDR in him. And there is a sense, so there's an environment that says that work should be valued and should be compensated properly. And you have a president of the United States who says that all the time, doesn't say, well, you got to grin and bear the, huge changes of globalization and competition. He says work has to be prioritized, but you also have young people in particular who have said and understood that the way to create power for themselves and others is through collective action and collective bargaining and collective associations. And that is also, for capitalism, the way you create a check and balance in terms of capitalism. So we've gone from a right wing that has, for the last 50 or 60 years, undermined collective action and labor unions and the movement, and you see, all those cases after cases after cases, and wrongly termed things like right to work and things like that. And in that crevice, in that divide, in that in the in the space that has created, you see the labor movement ascendant. You see kids basically saying, wait a second, I want better for myself and my families. You see workers saying, wait a second, I want better for myself and my families. And that's how you're seeing, the people in Amazon saying, I want to organize.
Yeah.
People in Starbucks saying, I want to organize. But the good news here is, even when or if we lose one or two of these, it doesn't stop the movement. The movement is growing and growing and growing. So look at what happened in SAG-AFTRA. Look at what happened with the Writers Guild. Look at what happened with the bakery workers. Look at what happened with UPS. Look at what happened with UAW. Look at what's happened. We had Red for Ed. We had a lot of strikes in 18 and 19. We've also had several strikes since that point. We stopped during COVID because we knew that, frankly, it was really important to get kids back into schools and really focus that way. So you don't see as many educator strikes, but look at in the hospital sector and the healthcare sector. And I have to say, for us as the AFT, with all the hating that the extremists do of us and trying to undermine teaching and learning in public schools, we've now had 74 new units of workers joining, either through card checks, but mostly through elections since January. I've never witnessed this. 74 new units, thousands of new workers. Now, we don't actually truly count them in the membership until they get their first contract, but that we've never had this. So this is labor union ascendant because workers want a better life for themselves and their families. And the more density we have, the more benefits that people will see in terms of higher pay and better health care and retirement benefits.
You used the word movement a moment ago, and I don't know that I necessarily want to argue with that, but I do want to probe it. Movements in this country, as you know, you are, as you mentioned, a social studies teacher, so you understand and look through. You engage your work and witness through the lens of history, which I applaud. But movements are very rare in this country. My frame is this, Randy. I believe that you start with a moment. That moment, if you're fortunate, builds momentum. And that momentum can become a movement. Moment, momentum, and movement. That's the way I have read history when you talk about movements. Moment, momentum, and movement. So, again, that movements are very rare. So you use the word movement, and you choose your words very carefully. You didn't say moment. You didn't say momentum. You said movement. Do you think that we are witnessing a movement now on the part of labor in this country?
I'm hopeful about it. I think that we call ourselves a movement, Travis, and we have called ourselves a movement for a long time. But we lost a lot of density, and we lost a lot of clout over the course of the last 50, 60, 70 years. But we didn't die, and so the underpinnings, the foundation stones, have still been there. But what's happening is that new breath has been breathed into the trade union movement.
Right.
And so I think we've taken these moments. So, for example, I was quite concerned, and I'm rooting for Amazon, and there's going to be another, there'll be a lot more attempts to organize Amazon workers.
Right.
But, 10 or 20 years ago, if we lost an election, like if the UAW lost a big election in terms of auto, or we lost a big election, then, you'd have a lot of pundits say, well, the moment has passed.
Yeah.
Because the momentum has been, to use your words, the moment has passed. The momentum has been stymied.
Yeah.
And what I'm seeing now is that, sometimes you have one step forward, two steps backwards, but people are getting up and still organizing.
Yep. And
still doing that work. And that's why I think that it is a movement that is rising, that is.
Limited time here with Randy Weingarten, but a couple more things I want to cover with her when we come forward. I want to get her take, of course, on the state of American education. She could spend hours talking about that. We don't have hours, but I just want to get her to read her take, her temperature on where we are now with education in this country. I do want to ask her how she reads this increase in homeschooling. I've had a number of conversations on this program, as our listeners know, about homeschooling. And certainly in the African-American community, it has really caught fire. Homeschooling African-American children. Want to get her take on that as well. So a few more things to cover when we come forward with the president of the American Federation of Teachers, AFL-CIO, our guest, Randy Weingarten on Tavis Smiley.
Hope, agency, dignity. This is Tavis Smiley.
Can you dig it? Come on! What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
At Susan G. Komen, we believe that ending breast cancer needs all of us working together. Because if you've just been diagnosed and don't know where to turn, we've got you. If you can't afford the treatment you need, we've got you. And if you are driven to honor the loved one you've just lost, we have a place for you here. Because of you, we're supporting those who need help today while tirelessly searching for tomorrow's cures. Visit Komen.org and be a part of our Susan G. Komen community today.
In association with KBLA Talk 1580, the Terry Claiborne Foundation presents its 26th annual holiday party, Saturday, December 9th, featuring live entertainment, celebrity appearances, plus food and drinks. There is a cover charge for this party of the season, but not if you're one of our special guests. All you have to do is go to our website at KBLA1580.com and sign up. That's it, that's all. Just sign up at KBLA1580.com and you could win entrance to the soiree of the season. But whether you win or not, get a ticket, support the kids, and come join us on the red carpet in your semi-formal club attire and celebrate the season with KBLA Talk 1580 and the Terry Claiborne Foundation as we collect toys for the youth in our community. That's Saturday, December 9th, 1110 South La Cienega Boulevard, just south of Olympic. It's a holiday party with a purpose.
I'm Terry Claiborne. It's going to be a party. Come hang out with us.
Sounds different, huh? This is Tavis Smiley.
This is Tavis Smiley in conversation with the president of the American Federation of Teachers, AFL-CIO, Randy Weingarten, watching my time, which is getting away. I want to cover a few more things with Randy Weingarten. Randy, let me start with what, again, you could spend hours unpacking, but give it to me in short form, the state of American education, given that we just celebrated American Education Week in this country.
Mm-hmm. So let me actually start with 90% of kids in America still go to public schools.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been lots of ways that, there's been lots of opt-outs of public schooling over the course of, the last 50 to 100 years. And there's been lots of things that have been wrong with public schooling. But the thing that's right about public schooling is that every state in America, every municipality, every county, every rural area, there is an obligation that we teach our children and that, parents have a right to do something else with their kids. But the state, the public, has an obligation to actually help our children learn and thrive in a safe and welcoming environment. Now, I think that what that COVID George Floyd's murder, the gun violence, mental health crisis, social media. There's lots of things that have made the job of a school teacher right now, and frankly, the job of a parent right now, harder than maybe ever before. And so I'm not surprised that the numbers of homeschooling have gone up. Also not surprised that over the course of the last year, that the numbers of kids coming back to public schools have started ticking up as well. But at the end of the day, what public schools should do is we need to create a safe and welcoming environment that addresses the issues of today and tomorrow, not the old factory model that we were in years and years ago. So that's why I focus on, Tavis, not just fighting the book bans and fighting the censorship, but what are we going to do in schools to help combat loneliness, to help ensure literacy skills, to help, deal with mental health crisis? What are we going to do so that kids really want to be in schools and parents want to send kids to schools? So we're on this kick of really focused on community schools and wraparound services to take on the social media companies and the algorithm. We have given out 9 million books as people have tried to ban books in lots of different diverse titles, and help teachers learn and master the science of reading so that they can help all kids. And the thing I'm most excited about is we should be doing a lot more stuff in terms of experiential learning. Could you imagine if kids learned from you about how to be a broadcaster, about how to really do media, about how to have that kind of career ladder and career path? We have chips coming into this country. We should be making sure that kids have a career path into advanced manufacturing. We have a huge shortage in terms of healthcare. We should have pathways there as well. And at the same time, we should cut the cost of college so that it's affordable. 94% of kids in these CTE programs, the career tech programs, graduate from high school on time, and 70% go to college. So, yes, there's homeschooling. Yes, it's for lots of different reasons, a lot of it being safety. But we need to make sure that public schools deal with ensuring that kids develop relationships, overcome learning loss, overcome anxiety, loneliness, and really get their mojo back and really want to go into school because they're learning something fun and meaningful.
We started this program today, Randy, in a half-hour tribute to Rosalind Carter, who, as you know, spent a half-century working on the issue of mental health. So to hear you raise that issue in this conversation just connects the dots in ways that always amaze me when I sit and try to moderate this program for 3 hours every day. When we come forward in our remaining moments with Randy Weingarten, this program is syndicated across the country, and we are heard in a beautiful place called Chicago. And the mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson, has been a guest on this program a few times, is in fact a school teacher. And I'm curious to ask Randy, what happens when school teachers go into public policy, when they go into the public service arena as elected officials? What advantage do we have when we have more teachers going into that kind of public policy? We'll get Randy's take on that in our final moments when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
What's your quarrel with the world? You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
It's the gift-giving season, and we have a gift for you. Visit us online at kbla.store for holiday savings of 20% off all of our KBLA swag. For the best in merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to kbla.store right now. And be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at kbla.store today. That's kbla.store for all our official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580, at 20% off, but only during the holiday season. Happy holidays.
Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas!
Discover, this is Danny.
Hi, it's Jen Coolidge. I just want to thank you for making me feel so special. I earned cash back on debit for my dinner party groceries.
That's great. But with Discover Cashback Debit, we give everyone cash back on everyday purchases. Anything else I can help you with?
Are you hungry? 'Cause everyone left after the asparagus sorbet.
Introducing Discover Cashback Debit, a checking account with cash back. It pays to Discover. Eligibility and terms at discover.com/cashbackdebit. Discover Bank, member FDIC.
KBLA Talk 1580 is the exclusive media sponsor of this light of ours, activist photographers of the Civil Rights Movement. A dynamic new exhibition on view now at the Skirball Cultural Center in Los Angeles. This light of ours showcases more than 150 photos taken by movement insiders from diverse backgrounds that reveal the vital work undertaken by a broad coalition of organizers and everyday people whose collective action changed America. This light of ours is one of 3 temporary exhibitions currently on view at the Skirball, which together explore issues related to civil rights, immigration, and pluralism. Tickets and more information for all 3 exhibitions are available at skirball.org. That's skirball.org. SKIRBALL.org.
Ready to re-examine your assumptions and expand your inventory of ideas? More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
Got about 2.5 minutes left, Randy Weingarten. Just a quick 2.5 minutes. But I celebrate Brandon Johnson, who I've known for years. I consider him a friend. As the mayor of the city of Chicago, we are heard there on WVON, the voice of the Negro. Love that station in Chicago. But what happens when school teachers become elected officials?
So there's more empathy.
Yeah.
There's more context. There's more understanding. School teachers have to figure out how to solve problems. You don't sit in a class, complaining about things. You sit in a class trying to help kids learn, trying to connect the dots, trying to figure out what the solution is and how to implement it and execute it. And you do it oftentimes without the resources, without the respect. So you learn how to be MacGyver better than MacGyver. And Brandon has all of those skills, and on top of it, comes from the community and is embraced in community. I was honored to be one of his, surrogates during his campaign. And I watched how he really, I've always seen him. I've known him for a long time. We've worked together for a long time, but we've done it in the schools and the labor movement context. I watched him as he ran be so completely embraced by the Chicago African American community as one of their own. He's embraced by teachers as one of their own. And I think what happens is it gives somebody like Brandon, the mayor, a benefit of the doubt. And look what's happening. Crime, serious crime is down in the city. And, again, he's taken a multifaceted approach that says, let's get to the root of things. Let's create dignity. Let's create more jobs. Let's create ways that we really holistically solve problems that help people become, help people with the tools that they need to have a dignified life.
Yep. Randy Weingarten, always appreciate you taking my phone calls and accepting our invitation to come on this program when we need you to talk about the key issues of the day. Thank you. Happy holiday season to you. Randy Weingarten, president of the American Federation of Teachers, AFL-CIO. Randy, I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Tavis. Have a happy holiday.
Likewise.
Be safe.
More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
We'd like to thank you for sharing a part of your Tuesday with us here on the Black Information Network. I'm Mike Moore. Now here's the latest. President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden are set to attend a tribute service today in Georgia for late former First Lady Rosalind Carter. Also on hand will be former President Jimmy Carter, her husband of 77 years. Carter's attendance comes despite him being in hospice care. The formal funeral will take place tomorrow. The Minnesota Supreme Court is breaking new ground after a ceremony yesterday in St. Paul. Natalie Hudson was sworn in as Chief Justice, becoming the first black person to ever hold that position. Hudson was first appointed to the High Court in 2015. Now, she'll be forced to retire in just 4 short years. That's when she'll turn 70. And that's